invented something when it was given to them via programming for the Black Ops project. Some people have their souls taken out of their bodies via advanced technology and literally boxed. That's soul scalping. That's basically going to feel like the biblical Tartarus, Hades, or Purgatory. Although Purgatory is not biblical, actually. The spirit prison for bad people, where they go, apparently, to await Judgment Day. A similar example of this boxing is in the TV series Battlestar Galactica. Here are some verses that indicate that mankind is that very dust again. Numbers 23:10. Who can count the dust of Jacob? Job 30:19. He hath cast me into the mire, and I am become like dust and ashes. Psalms 103:14. For he knoweth our frame. He remembereth that we are dust. Isaiah 34:7. And the unicorns shall come down with them, and the bullocks with the bulls, and their land shall be soaked with blood, and their dust made fat with fatness. Basically, their bodies will be made fat. Zephaniah 1:17b. And their blood shall be poured out as dust, and their flesh as the dung. Perhaps these all link to the reason for the dust and ashes people used to put over their heads when repenting, and it's likely also linked to this instructional verse. Matthew 10:14. And whosoever shall not receive you, nor hear your words, when ye depart out of that house or city, shake off the dust of your feet. So dust basically is the basic ingredient for flesh or bodies, whether it is man or creature. Spirit, soul and dust make up mankind. Again, proving that we are made in the likeness of our Creator. 1 in 3, 3 in 1. Angels, by the way, are at best 2 in 1 beings, physical body and spirit, but no living soul. It is possible that they are only spirit beings. Many people are now saying that when light particles slow down or stop, it can become solid, or at least pliable, into any shape desired. So it could be that these spirit beings of light only have a physical form when turning up in our physical dimension. Mankind was actually created then more in the likeness of the Creator than the angels were. Maybe that's what it means when the Bible says that man was made a little above the angels. Many angels were created in the image of God, but not in his likeness. That's just some of the verses, but the picture should be clear with them. So the serpents were cursed by God to have to eat the seed of woman, or mankind, to live, which in turn explains some other things, like millions of kidnappings and abductions down through history. Anyway, that's the dust of the earth explained, so now I can explain the rest of the phrases in these 2 verses. Upon thy belly shalt thou go. For years I've thought about crocodiles on their bellies and struggled to make sense of this verse. In fact, this is nothing to do with reptiles or serpents having to crawl on their bellies. In many versions this has been mistranslated. For instance, the New International Version, or the NIV, says, "You will crawl on your belly." Many others have disguised the true meaning by simply changing "upon thy belly" to "on thy belly you shall go," which gives the picture of things crawling on their bellies. This entire scenario is a cleverly disguised one. What "upon thy belly shalt thou go" really means is basically the same as the phrase "an army marches on its stomach." So we have this bizarre situation whereby wherever mankind is, there the serpent must be also. So "upon thy belly thou shalt go" means that their primary necessity above all else is to secure a permanent food supply, a food source of people. This adds a lot of credence to the stories of millions of people over man's history being literally shipped off to other nearby planets for what is basically meat storage. When these adversaries of mankind show up openly, just like they did over some 5,000 years ago, they will of course reintroduce human or man sacrifice. Not only that, but they fully intend us to be the ones that not only worship them as gods, but serve up our fellow brothers and sisters for their supper. Of course, by that time, though, the people will be chipped and totally under robotic control. So their every movement, and especially the hidden locations of the serpentine races, is determined by their food source, us. To my mind, that proves that they do not come from galaxies far, far away. They are creatures of this universe, just not primarily this dimension. One of the things the great serpent achieved in the garden was separating mankind from accessing the serpent's home dimension naturally, as Adam and the first woman may well have been able to before the fall. They did, after all, freely interact with the trees in the garden, which are merely metaphors for angels. Dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. So, this is the exact reason then for the hatred between mankind, the serpentine races, and most likely their followers too. You can't have a stronger reason for a hatred between two species than one having to eat the other to live, and the other having to defend itself to survive. God himself has ordained it to be this way. The perfect reason for enmity and battle. And taking in the long-term view, is there really any better way to get an issue resolved once and for all than arranging an ultimate showdown as prophesied? If there was no enmity, there would also be no reason to end the conflict which the serpents started by trying to take over this earth by making their own twisted creatures through hybridization. Adam the individual was created later in Genesis chapter 2, partly to take the planet back on the Creator's behalf. Therefore, it's my belief that mankind should hate with a perfect hatred the serpents, whether they are reptilian, grey, giant or hybrid. There really is no room for pacifism between us. Messiah's message of loving your enemies was meant for mankind, not the serpents or their hybrid children. It is clear what our Maker thinks of them in the Bible stories. I can say this with a clear conscience because I have met a reptilian face to face. I have witnessed the reptilian's pure hatred of us firsthand, when I cast one out of its hiding place, and I have the scars on my face to remind me. So when people say to me, "You don't really believe in spirits, demons and angels, do you?" with a mocking smile on their face, I just have to laugh right back at their ignorance. These entities don't have the same size restrictions as we do when it comes to physical objects. They can travel through electricity cables or take up residence in that small wooden idol brought home from a holiday. Bringing evil into our homes is so easily done through ignorance of the devil's devices. Anyway, on with the next section. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. People have been confused over this section just as much. Again, the NIV is delicately misleading with, "He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel," which makes it harder to understand as it leads the thoughts into ones of battle and such like. In fact, the meaning is amazingly simple. It simply means that the serpents will be living underneath the population of mankind, and therefore have to strike upwards from below, and vice versa. This is the key indicator that they mainly live within our very own hollow earth. This explains all the underground activity, the hellish sounds recorded by that Siberian mining company when digging deeper than ever before, the flying craft coming out of the oceans, and just so many things. Talking about that Sounds of Hell recording from the Edge's archives, isn't it possible then that the miners merely found a cavern where people are imprisoned, tortured and eaten? It does not necessarily have to have been hell itself. It's my belief that this is why the dumb bases are controlled by people only on the upper levels, and only the aliens dominate the lower levels. They simply do not want people getting close to their homes. In saying this, though, we do know that they have interplanetary travel, and so they do live on other planets as well. But they need a continual supply of people to live off. Hence the journeys back and forth as they ferry, among other things, thousands of sheeple livestock. So in reality, the verses are simple, but they have been overcomplicated and confused.